When we've been planning the visit to Cyprus, I didn't know how lucky I would be that I would be coming to Cyprus at the time where we see a lot of positive developments. We see that after very difficult structural reforms, the economy in Cyprus is picking up. The unemployment is gradually going down. I was very encouraged by meeting the political leaders yesterday and got a clear impression that there is strong effort being put on looking for the best possible outcome of the Cyprus issue. As you know, I had the honor to be received by the President of Cyprus, Mr. Anastasiadis, that I had a very interesting, important talk with Foreign Minister Kasoulides, and we discussed in a great detail all elements of the energy union with the Minister of Energy, Lakotrypis. And I also have to say that I was very much impressed by the possibility to meet both negotiators, Andreas Mavroyiannis, whom I know from our previous collaboration in different positions, or in the diplomatic service, or in the EU structures, but also Mr. Ozdil Nami, because we had very fruitful meeting yesterday where it was quite clear that both sides understand each other very well and they are ready to look for the creative solutions which would bring the positive conclusions of the Cyprus settlement talks. I also would like to say that I came here to thank Cyprus for their support for the Energy Union, which is one of the top priorities of the Juncker's European Commission, because we felt that in the 21st century we really have to look at energy and climate in a different way. We have to see it as 5 very important dimensions which would reinforce each other, and where we need the progress in all of them. We need to have better energy security. We need finally to complete the work of the internal energy market where energies could flow freely among the member states. That we need to proceed with decarbonization of our economies, achieve much more in energy efficiency, and put much more focused impetus on research and innovation. And I had the chance to discuss all of these dimensions not only with the political representatives but also with the stakeholders. The meeting we had this morning, be it representatives of the business communities but also head of research, representatives of universities, leaders of the renewable industry in Cyprus, and I was very much encouraged how much focus, ideas and attention is paid to this project. I think it's very important because, as I was explaining in all my meetings, this year for the Energy Union is a year of delivery. We promised that we would put on the table proposals which would cover 90% of what we promised we would do under the Energy Union umbrella, be it in the field of energy security, in the field of energy efficiency, be it as measures respecting our commitments and obligations we undertook in Paris, or be it in the field of redesigning the electricity market in Europe, which must be much better able to integrate renewables and to be really up to the challenges of 21st century. We discussed also a lot the new possible important role of Cyprus in the Eastern Mediterranean, especially in connection with the new discoveries of gas in this region, where it's quite obvious that these new discoveries and the way how they would be explored in the future could change to a great extent geoeconomics, but I would also say geopolitics of this region. Because thanks to Cyprus and a good partnership they developed over the years with Egypt, with Israel, with Jordan, we are now looking at the possibilities of the joint approach to the development of this newly found natural wealth in this part of Mediterranean, which I'm sure will be to the great benefit of the whole island, to the region. And because what I saw are the projections of the figures, of the quantities, of the volumes of the gas being discovered in Eastern Mediterranean. It could also be very important contributions to the energy security of Europe, because you know that here we are looking for opening more of the European market to the new suppliers of gas, of LNG, just to make sure that we will have better competition and better prices on the European energy market. And as you know, I'm from Slovakia, and Slovakia, thanks to the great and profound relationship with Cyprus, is organizing already for some time the bicommunal dialogue in Cyprus, and plays a very important role in peacekeeping operations here. So I was very glad that in the last minute change of the program, and being quite lucky that today there is a medal ceremony in the UN headquarters, I could also meet the Slovcon, meaning Slovak contingent in UNICEF, and just to talk to our soldiers, just to tell them that we are very proud of what they do here, and that they have a very important mission to play. And I was very glad to hear from them how well they are treated here, and also that strong sense of mission they have to make sure that the developments in Cyprus are only positive, and we will be all heading to the peaceful settlement of the conflict, which was marked this beautiful island already for 41 years. But after these 2 days from here, I am leaving full of optimism that the solution will be found, and as I reiterated yesterday, I just can confirm the clear position of the President of the European Commission that we will do our utmost to help to create conducive atmosphere to find this good solution and to be as helpful as we can be.
You mentioned about a joint approach. Now you're looking at a joint approach on how to develop new gas discoveries in the region. If you could perhaps elaborate on that, and also to what extent can gas deposits in the region contribute to EU security, energy security? If you could quantify that for me, please. And what is the surest, safest, and most reasonable route for this gas to reach European markets?
At first, of course, we are still in the exploration stage, so it's very difficult to be definite and super precise, but I will still give you some figures. If you look at what is the yearly consumption of gas in Europe, so depending, of course, on the winter, depending on the economic cycle, we are consuming in Europe between 400 to 500 billion cubic meters per year. I think that last year, I think it was 404, if I'm not mistaken. Our projection for 2030, with all our efforts in energy efficiency, with all our efforts in introducing more renewables, is that more or less it would be the same, because of the economic development, because of the fact that gas is seen as ideal transitional fuel until we'll be able to use more renewables and to decarbonize more. So, of course, the needs for European economy and European consumers are pretty high. And then, of course, we have seen over the last year how important it is to have the secure supply of gas, and therefore one of the key elements we introduced into the energy union strategy, and actually the first dimension is very much linked to the security of supply and with the diversification of our supplies. Therefore, you will see in a few weeks, in February, that we are going to present a big package, security of supply package, where we will be not only looking at the revision of the supply of gas directive, but also we will be presenting new LNG strategy, meaning that we want to open Europe to more suppliers of the gas for our economy, to make sure that we will have a choice, we will have a security of the supply, and we will have a little bit more competition on our market, so we can get better prices for our consumers. And in this respect, the developments in the East Mediterranean are very positive, because I would say even initial estimates how important the gas fields close to Egypt, Zohr, Leviathan close to Israel, or Aphrodite close to Cyprus, clearly seem to be very, very promising. And of course, I mean, it will take some time to elaborate the precise plan, because I understand that the needs of Cyprus and region come first. I'm sure that there will be quite big demand in Egypt. I know that Cyprus wants to use the gas for the electricity production. I was yesterday in the Vasilikos power plant, and the plans there are quite clear. But as it seems right now, it's quite clear that there is a potential for export. And here, of course, it would be up to the operators to find the most economical routes how to export the gas. It would depend, of course, on the quantities. It would depend on the location. But the potential for exporting the gas from this region is clearly there, and therefore I was very glad that we included into the list of projects of common interest, which is actually quite important, a list of projects which have a full support of all EU member states and EU institutions, 5 very important projects for Cyprus. Because we want to see that Cyprus is linked with the continental Europe energy systems, that we overcome the situation that Cyprus is not only island but unfortunately still energy island. And you will find on that list of projects 2 projects covering the electricity interconnection with Israel and Europe, and 2 projects covering the possible gas interconnectors between the fields and Cyprus, and between the Cyprus and Crete. And the last project is very much aimed at adjusting the infrastructure on the island proper to actually manage these new possibilities being interconnected with the neighborhood and with Europe. But of course all the modalities would very much depend on the further exploration and feasibility studies which are done, which are paid by the European Commission. But I'm sure that the potential here is very big, and usually the best way is if you find the proper partnership and cooperation to use, explore, and if possible export the gas in the joint operations, because it usually saves the costs.
You didn't mention the falling price of oil and gas, and the fact that whatever your plans are for the whole European Union energy security, this area in particular, where we're talking about fields that have not yet been developed, that development is surely contingent upon it being financially feasible to develop those fields, which at the moment it doesn't actually look like it is the case. So what is a plan B for Europe if it turns out that for the next 20 or 30 years it just isn't financially viable to get the gas out of the Eastern Mediterranean?
I think that of course the prices are volatile, and when I had the discussion, I would say exactly a year ago, with such a leading figures in oil and gas business, they've been all agreeing on one factor that nobody could predict, that price development which is taking place right now. And we have seen, I would say, the volatility of these prices also in the past, but at a certain moment the market would kick in, and therefore it's very difficult to predict what would be the price level, what would be the price development. But what is, I would say, very clear from the prospect of the energy companies and energy investors, and this is what I heard also here in Cyprus, but also from other energy operators, is the fact that Europe is a very good customer. Europe is a very good customer. We are the biggest economy in the world. We have very stable demand. We pay still relatively high prices. We pay on time, and we pay in hard currency. Therefore, what we want to see is that we would also get the good service for the price we pay, and we understand that for that we need to improve our infrastructure. We need to open Europe more for the business, and that we have to have more competition on the market. So if you talk to the operators and explorers, where to invest, but especially where to export. Europe is usually the prime destination because they know that they're good customers, and that is, I think, one of the factors which I believe would be very important for the exploration of the potential of the East Mediterranean, because of course you have the countries in the neighborhoods which are developing very quickly, where the energy needs would be on the rise. Therefore, I said that it would be pretty natural that for the entrepreneurs the natural solution would be to look at first in the neighborhood, where we can export, how we can use the natural world which was found here, what would be the shortest route to the end customer. But looking at the figures which are being presented, and of course we still have to see that this is a transitional phase where the proper estimates are still finalized, but I mean, one of the figures I have seen vis-a-vis the Zohr field, the estimate been about 3,000 billion cubic meters, so this is something like 8 years of the overall European consumptions that Leviathan field, which is now prospected by the Israelis and American entrepreneurs, it's of the similar magnitude. So here we are talking about the volumes and quantities which clearly have the export potential, and Europe, as I said, is going to develop its own LNG strategy. We are going to link better our LNG terminals, and we see the Mediterranean and kind of gateway for all possible new supply routes to come from this region to Europe. So what we can offer here is that we are very transparent and open. We know how much gas we would need. The potential exporters know what to expect from us, and I believe that this would be one of the factors which would be very important also for the investors to make their investment decisions.
Mr. Commissioner, just to elaborate, because you talked about gas, and you also talked about the PCIs that include the electricity cable. That's also a project that is going parallel to your plans for LNG and this gateway that you just mentioned. How important is it for example, Cyprus to no longer be isolated and be connected to a European grid? And also, how important is it to be possible to supply energy produced in the Eastern Mediterranean, possibly by cable, directly into the Western European, all the national grids that exist there?
Yeah, here, if you allow me just to give you a little bit more comprehensive answer, the fact is that when we started with the Energy Union project, it was quite clear that we are paying for the higher electricity and gas prices, for simply high prices for energy, because despite the fact that we are so proud of our single market in Europe, that we have the free movement of persons, goods and services, unfortunately we still do not have it in the field of energy. So to trade with energy, it's not easy in Europe. We have a lot of technical obstacles, lack of interconnectors, lack of transmission capacities. We have problems with our what I call the energy software, that very often our regulators use a different language, different methodology, not always fully compatible, and this is what we are trying to correct. And the last thing, which was very much present in our considerations, was the fact that we simply in the 21st century have to overcome the situations where we have territories in Europe which are really energy islands, because Cyprus was not the only one in this situation. I mean, we did, I think, very good work with our Baltic friends to link them up with continental Europe. We are doing a lot with Southeast Europe, with Western Balkans, even though they are not yet the members of the EU. But if it comes to the Energy Union, we always say that it doesn't stop at the EU borders, because we know that if we want to have stability in our energy supplies, in our energy grids, we need to work very closely with our neighbors. And we had to be very creative and to find the solutions for Malta. And I think that the same creativity and entrepreneurship is required when we would be looking at the situation in Cyprus, because I know very well that Cyprus went through very difficult moments because of economic crisis, but also because of the situation at the power station in Vasilikos. I have to say, I was there yesterday. I saw the pictures, I saw the photographs, and I think you have to really bow to your engineers that how quickly they managed to put everything back on track and to put back the power station into operation and to prepare it for the future, more economical and more environmentally friendly cycle, using more gas in the future. But the fact is that if you are operating on the market which is isolated from the rest of the Europe, your possibilities are rather limited, because I think that the network of the 21st century with more renewables, which are of course the sources by nature very volatile, needs to be in the bigger structure. So the link up, the interconnector with Europe definitely should be bidirectional, and I think that your consumers should have the possibilities to benefit from the better prices on continental Europe, or the continental Europe customers should have a benefit if the prices are lower in Cyprus. I was highlighting in all my meetings your enormous potential in renewable energy. When I was presenting the Energy Union strategy, I was told by one member of the European Parliament that European Union was found as a coal and steel community, so now it's time to transform it into the sun and wind union. And I think here you have abundance of sun, you have pleasant wind, you have your research institutes very much working on how to integrate better the renewables into the grid, and I think they should be very strong selling point not only for the Cypriot consumers, but as you know, we established this Mediterranean platform for electricity, for gas and for renewables, and that's something I think where Cyprus could be very instrumental to spread the technology also to your partners. So I think that the cooperation is always working the best if it's mutually beneficial for both parties at the end of the interconnector, and this really could be the case, and therefore we think that these interconnections are very important, and we are currently finalizing the feasibility studies to know what would be the best option, what should be the technical parameters, what would be the cost, and how we can work together to make sure that Cyprus, of course, would remain the island, but from the point of view of European energy networks, not longer an energy island.